Ever since it was first announced, Mineko's Night Market stood out to me as something potentially special. After several delays though, the Canadian-based studio are finally releasing the final build. The game encompasses their love of Japanese culture, specifically the folklore island Tashirojima, also known as the Cat Island, and of course their own beloved pets. It releases on September the 26th, and there are several reasons why I absolutely love it, and a few which, well, you should definitely be aware of. My name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp. If you enjoy the content, then consider sticking around. Is Mineko's Night Market perfect? Well, let's find out. The game begins with the titular Mineko and her father arriving at this small island. He's reading her a story about a cat who once blessed a farmer with abundant crops, only for the local inhabitants to turn against him and send the cat into the wilderness. When Mineko arrives, she makes a few close friends such as Bobo, who is convinced that these stories are actually true. This main narrative arc runs throughout the entire game, and it makes it a much more coherent and enjoyable experience. Many of the quests and things you'll have to craft are linked to this storyline, and it gives it a clear and ever-present goal. The storytelling across the board is excellent in Mineko's Night Market. Particular credit has to go to the sardonic writing. Now, this wouldn't be the first game that tries to be sharp and witty, but it's one of the few that actually manages to achieve it whilst being very funny. It just has a feeling of not really trying too hard, while succeeding at almost every turn when it comes to that written narrative. It's really quite impressive. Gameplay and controls, well, things are going to get much more interesting from here on out, and there's a lot in here, and I think all of it's important if you're considering picking the game up. The experience is split over several days, and at the end of each week, the titular night market takes place. In here, you can sell the items that you've gathered, but more on that later. Your first port of call is visiting a few places around the island. This is done with the bus. When you find new locations, it's here that you're first introduced to the agents that have taken residence and seem to be looking for some strange artifact. Thus, any new area has to be cleared of the agents, which will usually involve you finding several cats, dressing up as delivery men, or just sneaking around. Once those areas are cleared, well, you can go about collecting any of the ingredients you find, be they different types of plant, hairballs from cats, in a variety of different colours of course. You might need to go fishing down by the docks or mining for gems and minerals in the caves. What I enjoyed about the map here is how it's opened up gradually. It's another aspect like the storyline that isn't rushed, but it's also not slow. There are very few times where you won't know what to do next. You can bring up a journal and that will show any active quests you have going on, but I found myself using a pen and paper for some of Mineko's Night Market, and that was when I was handling the requests of the various inhabitants you'll meet. By fulfilling their needs, you'll unlock new recipes that can be crafted back in your house. And crafting is another area that's a little more deep than you might first think. While you start with a simple flower crafting box, there are several other crafting benches to be added. One for paper, wood, there's a sewing bench, an arts and crafts shelf, and later pottery and even metal. Mineko's Night Market is a deep game with a nice rhythmic flow to it. The balancing comes with a stamina system. This is shown by hearts at the top of the screen, and as you gather and collect items, these will drop down, eventually reaching 0 and requiring you to either head home or eat. Now the eating, well, you can do this 3 different times, and there are certain things that don't require stamina. Sprinting around doesn't require any, crafting doesn't need any, and the game's all the better for it. Also, you won't be juggling your inventory. The inventory just gets larger and larger, meaning you can carry absolutely anything. It's one of the most frustrating things for me in these games, where you're constantly running out of space, and yes, they do usually have some way of increasing the inventory size, but you won't even care about it here. You can just go out and get as much as you're able. Now with that said, the game does have a couple of bugs, and one of the ones I ran into early on were disappearing items in my inventory. They couldn't be seen at all, which was a real problem. Now I found that if I slept and reloaded the game, this tended to fix the issue, but as we'll see in the performance section, there are also a couple of other ones. Now you have a mailbox, but the general flow of the game will be going out, gathering up ingredients, heading home and trying to meet the needs of the people. And those crafting benches, well, they're a little more interesting than I thought they might be. They act like timing-based mini-games, and if you hit the perfect sequence, then you'll end up with a perfect product, which, as we'll see, sell for a little more. The town area starts with a few small shops and a set number of inhabitants. The shop allows you to sell at any point. You don't have to wait until that end-of-week market. This is a nice touch, and you'll definitely need that because you'll need to buy more and more tools, crafting benches, as well as food supplies to keep you going. The tool shop is also linked to your progression on the map. Certain areas will require you to have certain certain tools, like heading down to the beach with a shovel. Aside from the stamina system, the other limiting factor is the time. Whenever you travel to an area, time passes slightly. And if it gets too late, everything shuts and you might as well head home. I do have a couple of gripes when it comes to this. Chiefly, I think it's a bit silly that you head out from your town to any of the game's locations, but then you have to head back to the town before you can head to another one. I don't understand why they didn't let you just move from one to the other. It still could have cost you some time, but it could have slightly mitigated one of the biggest issues with the game on Switch at the moment, and that's the load times. Whether it's leaving your house or entering a shop, they're just a smidgen too long. You're looking at 10 to 15 seconds, and you will be hopping from location to location, and it can wear on the patience. Now, aside from the shops in your town, there are also museums. There's one for food, flowers, fish, and also gemstones. Contributing items to these will gradually allow for them to be opened up. And almost everything you do in Mineko's night market will reward you with new recipes as well as outfits to wear. These can be put on in the house, and they look awesome. So then at the end of each week, you have the night market that takes place. Hopefully you've gathered up a load of things that you've crafted, and you can either head there directly, or if you forget about it, a bus will turn up and essentially kidnap you. Initially, the night market is a dilapidated mess. There are only a few stalls, and you'll be selling whatever it is you've been able to cobble together throughout the week. I like the way this works. You can choose initially 5 and then 6 and 7 items, place them out on display, and then call the customers to arrive. Here you can choose the price that you want to charge them. Try not to go too expensive, but also not cheap. And sometimes you'll need to barter to secure the sale. It's really nice, it works well, and there's a certain thrill to making a little bit more money than you did the previous week. After there are no more customers left, you can walk around the market yourself making purchases, and this is where my little pen and paper came in. Those people around the village will have certain requests that can only be bought here. At the end of each night market, there's a special event. Things like racing on the back of a cat, or performing in a band, and the absolutely excellent stage shows you put on. They're a very clever way of expanding the lore of the universe as they center around the story that you're reading with your father at the beginning. This is the perfect time to talk about relationships. Your journal logs absolutely every relationship you have in the game. They're given a rating based on how many things you've done for them, and this isn't the dating style relationship. These will give you crafting items and new unlockables, but you'll also be able to perform quests to help new people arrive on your island and then help them set up their homes by providing building supplies. There are just exponentially more and more things to do, which is ideal for this style. Then there are the seasons. Now you'll start out in spring and then progress to summer, autumn and winter, with each season providing unique plant species to find. Top tip, make sure you store up a ton of flowers, because when the season changes, there'll be certain things you can't build anymore, or at least not easily. There are some aspects of gameplay I really don't want to spoil for you. There is a farming aspect as well, where you can plant crops in your garden, and let's just say the produce isn't quite what you might expect. Mineko's Night Market is a much more in-depth game than I thought it would be. Despite the flaws that we're going to specifically talk about in the performance section, it has charmed me. It's a delightful game, and the fact that it's as enjoyable as it is even with those issues, well, it's a testament to what the team have created here. It's even more of a shame then that those issues do directly sometimes affect the gameplay. Those load times and the handful of bugs I've experienced, they may be deal breakers for some people. As it stands, gameplay scores 17 out of 20. It's a heady mixture of relaxing, charming, compelling and addictive, and that would be even higher, as we'll see. Controls are just fine. You can sprint around, you can creep to evade, and I love the little mini games tied to the various ways of crafting. They score 18 out of 20. Visually, Mineko's Night Market looks wonderful. It has an almost paper cutout look to it that mimics the origami you use within the game. Frame rates need some serious work. They're not terrible, you're generally looking at 30 frames per second plus, but there's fluctuation here. It seems to be unlocked so that certain areas are 60, while others are noticeably more stuttery. I think there's also a memory leak in here. In one sitting I played for 8 hours, and by the end of that time, performance was pretty bad. After a reload, things were much better again. Then there are the bugs that I've mentioned. Disappearing items in your inventory. There's a sound bug so that whenever the game loads, the music stutters in the background and it's quite jarring. It makes those already slightly longer load times even more noticeable. The sewing machine in your house has a bug where when you craft something, there's a huge wait for that item to appear. The game almost freezes for that time. And there are certain trigger points on quests that if you don't do the thing in the right order, you may find yourself having to reload. Now, thankfully, none of these bugs cost me any real progress, but I do want to stress that this doesn't feel like a cheap rush. It just feels like maybe they bit off a little more than they could chew, because most of the gameplay aspects they've absolutely nailed. The artistic direction is great, and the soundtrack is spot on. If you're after a game you can relax to, well, Mineko's Night Market definitely has you covered. It's one of the first farming games I think I've ever played where I didn't hear a repetitive musical loop. It's not to say that the music doesn't loop, it's just so well designed that you constantly want to listen to it, and then it shifts with each new season or area. It's very strong. Visuals and performance, well, we've got a real split, haven't we? Artistically amazing, but performance, not so much. I'd give the visuals and performance 14 out of 20. When fixed, easily 18 or 19. The sound takes a hit with the bug I mentioned. It's another area that again would easily be 19 out of 20, but right now scores 17 out of 20. Mineko's Night Market will set you back £15.99 or your regional equivalent, and even with the few issues I've experienced, it still feels more premium than a lot of first-party titles. I think it's an incredibly good game and I really enjoy it. I just think there's a little tightening that needs to happen. They need to improve those glitches. There are some elements like selling items. Rather than just being able to sell one or all of them, let me select how many I sell and let me travel from location to location rather than back and forth between the town area. They're nitpicks, I know, and that says a lot about what the game offers. There's the potential to sink tens of hours into Mineko's Night Market and have a great time. And having that high point to look forward to at the end of each week was a very smart design choice. There's also a physical that's going to be available that obviously will be slightly more expensive, but I think this is one I would love to have physically. For me, 15 quid is bang on and really represents good value for money. I'd give value 18 out of 20. Mineko's Night Market has met my expectations as far as gameplay goes, but also some of my current worries as far as performance. Still, it gets a SwitchUp score of 84%, and as I'm sure you can hear in my voice, I'd say this would be high 80s, early 90s if performance was flawless. Keep your eye on the top pin comment. I'll make sure to revisit it, and it will definitely be in an all patched up episode. If you're picking it up now, just be aware of those few bugs, and also make sure you store up all those flowers between seasons. Thanks to all of you that enjoy the content, to our Patreons, our members, and to the publisher for the review copy, and as always for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!